closely to your microphones. I continue to get a couple people asking us to do that, so. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tonight is July 11th, 2018. This is the Board of Education for the School District of Waukesha. I'd like you to please stand with me and join in with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So will you please take the roll call?
William Baumgart.
Here.
Barbara Brezink. Greg Dietz.
Here.
Amanda Roddy.
Here.
Diane Voigt.
Here.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Here.
Kurt O'Brien.
Here.
Karen Reinacek.
Here.
Joseph Como.
Here. And Sue, will you also verify that the meeting's been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you for doing so. Tonight we're going to start with an inspirational moment, and I thought that since we celebrated July 4th last week, that we should take a quote from a past president. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. John Quincy Adams. And I appreciate the leadership that each of you bring to this school district. Moving on, bright lights. We don't have any bright lights at this time, seeing that most of the students are probably enjoying summer pretty well by now. But we do have a couple of recognitions. Chris Hedstrom will be introducing the new principal of Whittier Elementary School and also a new assistant principal at Horning Middle School. Chris?
Thank you very much. This evening, I would like to introduce to you someone that you already know. Her name is Tahre De Leon. She is the principal at Whittier Elementary School. Tahre, would you please join me?
Good evening.
Tahre is, she was the academic dean of students at Blair Elementary School, and prior to that, she was the bilingual elementary school teacher teaching second grade at Blair. She's worked in Waukesha since 2006. She earned her master's degree in educational leadership through Marian University and a bachelor's degree in education with a focus on bilingual and mathematics from the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. So I'm pleased to introduce to you our new principal at Whittier Elementary School, Mrs. De Leon.
Thank you for having me this evening. I am super excited for my next chapter in my professional career and starting at Whittier. A little history that, kind of is close to my heart. I did attend Whittier in first and second grade, and I attended Blair, where I'm coming from, for third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade.
Nice.
So it is definitely a cycle here of coming back and continuing to impact the lives of children, specifically because I did love my teachers, and I appreciated everything that they did for myself and my family, for them to understand and how to navigate the educational system here. So I hope to continue that as well at Whittier.
Thank you.
Any
Congratulations on your new position.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Do you really know what you're getting into at Whittier?
I thought I was going to get that question.
Not supposed to scare her.
I do love the challenge, though. I really think I can impact what has been done already and continue to do that and have an academic focus. Obviously, my primary goal this year, I think, is really important in creating relationship with our students and our families and our staff. And I think after that, with the urgency behind everything else, we got to jump on board.
So you'd be supportive of my $500,000 improvement plan for Whittier and
100%.
yeah, so I thought,
Can we stamp that now? Because
well,
Darren's gonna love
I've been
that.
struggling with administration on that issue, but we'll work on it.
just come and visit me. Come and visit me.
Take it from Blair, so we can get Ida to sign.
And my kids go to Blair, so we're kind of like this right now. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good luck. Yep, thank you.
Also, I would like to introduce to you Veronica Lashak. Veronica, would you join me, please? Ms. LaShock is currently the assistant principal, or was the assistant principal at Morgandale K-8 school in the Milwaukee Public School District. Prior to that, she was the bilingual school social worker at Riley K-5 school and Mitchell K-8 schools in Milwaukee. She has worked as the acting administrator at those two schools when the principal was absent. Additionally, she served as the secondary therapist at Shorehaven Behavioral Health, diagnosing and providing intensive in-home and outpatient therapy to youth ages 3 through 20. She earned her master's degree in educational leadership at Cardinal Stritch University, and she was actually in one of my classes that I taught. And she's earned a master's degree in social work from Loyola University in Chicago and her Bachelor of Arts at Marquette University. Veronica earned her principal and director of instruction certification from Stritch, and she is now our assistant principal over at Horning Middle School. She's already worked with us last month at, she was at 2 days of sale. So really glad to introduce to you Veronica LaShock.
I can't say how excited I am and how grateful I was to be appointed to this position and to be joining Waukesha School District. It is really an honor for me. I've worked at MPS, and I talk about full circle. At Morgandale, I was a student there and graduated from there. As a matter of fact, teachers were retiring when my final year here, there. But it was time to move on, and I really want to work in a district where I feel like I can make a better impact where there's more systems that we can kind of manipulate. And I'm very lucky to be appointed to be able to work with Bob Lessington. I think he and I are going to work wonderfully together. He brings some really strong skills that I think I'll be able to complement what he's able to do. So I'm very excited and ready to hit the floor running. So.
Well, welcome to our district, and thank you for choosing us. And I'm not going to call him Mr. O'Brien because I don't want him to scare you away.
Thank you very much.
She won't get a $500,000 either.
Okay, we typically have reports from our student representatives, but again, they are having fun this summer. But we will move on to a time where we listen to our citizens address the school board. As past practice, we give each individual 3 minutes to speak to the Board of Education. And at the 2.5-minute mark, Kurt O'Brien will give you a signal. And if you could wrap up your comments in the next 30 seconds, we'd appreciate it. We expect all speakers to honor our time limit, to refrain from using any inappropriate language in any manner, and be respectful in their comments. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking before the Board of Education in future meetings. We also expect that the audience will be respectful of the speaker and of the Board of Education, refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or other behavior that would detract from the meeting. And also to respect our speakers addressing us. Please silence your phones at this time if you haven't already. We do have a number of people signed up. Ms. Coronado will be up first, and Joyce Schmidt is on deck. Kimberly?
Hello, thank you. My name is Kimberly Coronado. I've addressed you before. I'm a parent with 4 children in the Waukesha School District, one who just graduated, per se. So my reason for coming here is I have 3 children with special needs, and they all have IEPs. And I just wanted to address the conditions or the what has been presented to us as a parent through the Waukesha School District. We have some huge issues to break the white elephant out of the room with, one being the article that was in the Freeman I think we really need to address that. It's one of the jugular veins, I guess, we'll be at with our school district. We need open, honest communication. We need transparency. Two of my children have dyslexia, and that has been completely shut down as far as evaluation, and reading is a foundation for building your child up. If they're not a good reader, they're not good at math. If not good at math, they're not good at getting a job. How are they supposed to support themselves? Accountability for administration to end the frustration that we have in the school district with special education. It is deplorable. I have said it before, and I will say it again. It is deplorable. We need inclusion, better inclusion for our children with special needs. We need transparency. I absolutely have asked, and I am begging you, please listen to your parents. Please listen to your kids. There's mental health needs that are not being addressed in the teachers, in the schools. This is the basic of school mental health. You need to fix this. And I'll end my comments, sir. You know my name. I will not be gone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joyce Schmitz, followed by Steve Schmitz.
Hello again. First, I would like to request that the School Safety and Security Committee televise their meeting tomorrow night and any subsequent meetings, as I'm sure that community members and board members would like the opportunity to watch. The first meeting was not televised. Since last March, those of us who have appeared before the school board in support of the resolution supporting the ban on assault weapons have provided you with facts, statistics, and personal opinions. But tonight, I want to take a different approach. Before I do, I got some more facts and statistics. I want to tell you that in March, the Council of the Great City Schools, which is the nation's primary coalition for 70 of the largest public schools in the nation, called for new federal legislation that would ban assault weapons. Also, did you know that in Wisconsin and in many other states, if you go duck hunting, you cannot have more than 3 shells in your shotgun at any one time? We don't want people killing too many ducks too quickly, but we don't seem to care when it comes to students like the 21st graders and 6 staff members at Sandy Hook, who were gunned down in less than 5 minutes with 156 shots fired. Now for my different approach. In May, one of the students who spoke to the board mentioned that when they hear a loud noise in the hall, the class turns towards the teacher to gauge how they should react. This statement should not be dismissed as teenager hyperbole. Instead, it should paint a clear picture for you about the fear that our students and faculty live with on a daily basis and the responsibility that falls on every staff member's shoulders. So instead of giving you more facts and statistics, I ask you to consider this resolution from their point of view. You never really understand a person until you climb into their skin and walk around in it. After you have considered the viewpoints of students and faculty, please climb into the skin of a parent who has lost a child to gun violence simply by sending that child off to school. Don't make this a hard-to-imagine scenario. Imagine you are that parent. Thank you again for your time.
And Steve Schmitz, followed by Carl Locke.
Thank you. I am here again, of course, to speak about student safety and assault weapons. First, I would like to reiterate that our request does not require a change in the Constitution. If it did, there would not be the current bans on assault weapons in 7 states, the District of Columbia, and various municipalities, and there would not be the federal appellate court cases that uphold these current bans. A change in the Constitution is not necessary. Next, there may be some board members who think that the topic of student safety and assault weapons should not be board business. We think that elected school officials, who students, parents, and others in the district turn to for leadership, are fulfilling the mission of supporting a safe learning environment by speaking out about this. This board has a policy. The policy is number 5511 that directs the superintendent to establish grooming guidelines to, among other things, secure the safety of students. That's what the policy says. It seems to us that when it comes to student safety, if it's the business of the board to have a policy about grooming, it is certainly appropriate for the board to make a one-time statement, and that's all we're asking for, a one-time statement about weapons that have no constitutional protection and that are used these days in mass school shootings. Last, we sent late last week a new proposed resolution to all of you from which we deleted any reference to urging legislators to do something. We did that to remove the concern that some of you apparently have about lobbying the legislature or other elected officials. At the last board meeting, Mr. Dietz paid us a compliment by referring to what we are doing as taking or showing courage, and we appreciate that. When the school board in Tampa Bay, Florida passed an assault weapons resolution in late February, one of the board members there said, "This is not about courage, this is about leadership." And maybe that's a theme tonight, starting with your inspirational quote. Maybe it's both courage and leadership, and we are looking to board members for that now. We think there may be members of this board who support our request. And if there are, we ask you to take this new proposed resolution and make it your own. We can't introduce a resolution. We don't have standing to do that, but you can. Mr. O'Brien has a resolution on the subject that he brought forth not long ago. So if you support what we're doing, take this new resolution, introduce it, have it go through the board process. Ensure that it comes back to the full board for a thorough discussion so that each member can tell the students and their parents and the rest of us in this district his or her position on banning these assault weapons, closing the loopholes, and enforcing background checks and waiting periods. We think that that is the fair and the right thing to do. And if you don't mind, I brought a couple of extra copies of that resolution. Can I leave them with the board secretary?
Absolutely.
In case somebody didn't get theirs in the mail? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmitz. Mr. Locke, followed by Luke.
Good evening, everyone. I wish to speak tonight to recommend a ban on assault weapons is in the best interest of the school in Waukesha. What is an assault weapon? 7 states have banned them, and although the definition varies, they are weapons specifically designed to kill large number of people quickly and efficiently at close range. To do that, they must be capable of rapid fire, and they must have large capacity magazines that can be quickly exchanged. Let me show you some of the weapons that were used to kill children. This is a picture of the Bushmaster XM-15. It was one of the weapons used at Sandy Hook to kill 28 and injure 2. A very similar weapon, the Smith & Wesson M&P-15, was used at Parkland, where 17 were killed and 17 injured. The Intratec DC-9 was used at Columbine to kill 15 and injure 21. Since the expiration of the federal assault weapons ban in 2004, these guns are legal to buy in Wisconsin. The Sig Sauer P225 is used by police. It was also used in the Sandy Hook massacre. These weapons are similar to others, many others on the market. They all have 2 things in common: rapid fire and quick change magazines. Why do people want to buy these weapons? There are many, among the many reasons, they're fun to shoot. If you don't believe me, go to Google and type in pine trees and AR-15. Another reason, 50% of the guns in the U.S. are owned by just 3% of American adults, so they must be fun to collect. Perhaps in part because it's human nature to at least be curious about things powerful and deadly. Some will argue these guns are needed for hunting, but how many bullets do you need to kill a deer? Regardless of your motives for owning them, the potential to cause great carnage is there. Mass shootings have occurred throughout history, but only recently has the frequency and casualty count increased significantly, due in part to easy access to assault weapons. You've already heard most of the reasons not to ban them. There are too many of them out there. The shooter will just find another way to kill you. If we only had good mental health programs, we wouldn't need to ban them. These are poor reasons, and I wish to address tomorrow at the safety meeting. Until we ban these deadly, unnecessary weapons, more children will continue to pay the price with their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. Luke?
Good evening, everybody. Tonight I'd like to offer some responses to points that were made during last month's School Safety Committee meeting. First, Mr. Como asserted nearly half a dozen times that, quote, we can't change the Constitution. While Mr. Como is correct that the board does not have the power to change the U.S. Constitution, I ask that the board reject any argument prefaced or augmented by this claim. The school safety resolution under consideration does not ask the board to pass legislation, let alone change the Constitution. It legally and respectfully petitions the state legislature to enact specific firearms restrictions that were explicitly and definitively upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2016, meaning that they are constitutional. To repeatedly claim, Mr. Como, that this resolution would either alter or violate the Constitution is therefore blatantly and shamefully false. You are either being ignorant of U.S. constitutional law or attempting to enforce your own erroneous interpretation of the Second Amendment in advancing this claim. I would turn now to Mr. McCafferty, who stressed during the committee meeting that his responsibility is to represent his constituents. In an interesting twist, he followed this up by announcing his opposition to the school safety resolution, saying, and I quote, I don't think this will do anything. Mr. McCafferty, your constituents are making it very clear that they believe in this resolution. According to your own assertion that you should be guided by their opinions, what you think is not and should not be the deciding factor in the fate of this issue. Furthermore, Mr. McCafferty, you stated that you are, quote, anti-ban anything. Would you support, then, allowing the use of alcohol or drugs on school property? Bringing weapons onto school property? Where was this conviction when the Waukesha School District attempted to ban students from organizing walkouts after the Parkland massacre? Mr. McCafferty, your arguments against the school safety resolution have been ridiculously hypocritical. You have yet to offer a single point which cannot be dismantled by your own words, and therefore no reason why this resolution should not pass. And I would turn now to the full board. Time and time again, the students, parents, and community members of Waukesha have been vocal, have been articulate, and have been resolute in our support of the school safety resolution. We have consistently offered data, statistics, and testimonies, while the opposition on the board and in the gallery, if present at all, has offered no factually grounded opposition. I urge you to side with the irrefutable evidence. I urge you to side with your constituents. And I urge you to ensure that the School Safety Committee gets back in there, gets to work, and acts to protect the students of this district by passing the school safety resolution. Thank you for your time.
That's all of the people who have signed up for approaching or directing their comments to the full board. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board at this time? All right, moving on. We're going to look at two sets of minutes for approval. June 13th, we have the regular board meetings, or board minutes. And then we have on June 13th also an executive session set of minutes for approval. Is there a motion to this effect?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Brezink. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bumgart. Any discussion? Sue, take the roll call vote, please.
Barbara Brezink.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Diane Voigt. Aye. Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0, Sue. Moving on to our communications. Mr. Gray, Dr. Gray.
We have two communications this evening. The first one is from Dave Sternig, Commissioner of the Classic 8 Conference, and he's congratulating Waukesha South High School for being recipient of the overall Classic 8 Conference Sportsmanship Award for 2017-18. And he lists a number of coaches here who have exhibited exceptional sportsmanship, and I will provide that in your board packet on Friday. As well as Waukesha West also being recipient of overall Classic 8 Conference Sportsmanship Award. And again, they've listed about 9-10 coaches here that have also exhibited exceptional sportsmanship. And again, so we will provide this information in your board packet. That's it.
Thank you. And Mrs. Voigt, do you have a report from the Waukesha Education Foundation?
Yes, I do. The WEF board did not meet on the 5th of July, but I'm pleased to share a brief report. We have been soliciting sponsors for the Waukesha Education Foundation, and Findorf has agreed to be a gold sponsor, which is a $2,500 level sponsorship, and a new silver level sponsorship, which is $1,000, is REMAX. So that's a impressive accomplishment in our downtime here of not having a meeting. We also have 105 registered golfers for our WEF golf outing in early August, and that's double what we had last year.
Nice.
So we're very, very pleased to have that number of people that are going to be participating. We are actively looking for an MC for our live auction and dinner program. So if anybody is a public speaker interested in taking on that responsibility on Tuesday, August 7th, definitely contact me and I can get you some more details. We're also accepting raffle and live auction items at this point. We are going to be joining the School District of Waukesha at the County Fair on Wednesday evening and on Saturday, and plan to make some real positive connections with a photo booth option that one of our board members is going to be bringing to the booth to draw people in. And we hope to see you at the fair, especially on Wednesday and Saturday. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Voigt. Moving on to our charter school and program report given by Mr. Bumgarner.
Nothing to report this month, Mr. Como.
Little activity, huh?
Yeah, well, most of the kids aren't interested in us right now.
All right, once a year, we have to consider an expulsion resolution that actually I'm very glad that we can bring this resolution forward. And Mr. Cook, will you introduce the resolution, explain what is this on?
Yeah, annually, with board's approval, the district is allowed to use an expulsion panel consisting of 3 members to conduct our expulsion hearings and make a recommendation for the full board. If the board chooses to pass that, we can conduct expulsion hearings without having the full board's presence. This has been a practice that goes back, if I look at the revisions here, to 1996 in the Waukesha schools.
Mr. Bumgarner.
Seeing as how I was here when we had all 9 board members sitting in on these meetings till midnight, I would like to make the move for the continuation of the annual expulsion resolution as was explained by Dr. Cook.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Brezink. Discussion? Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah, I would like to speak to the effectiveness of our expulsion panels and the improvements that have been made in the last year by the administrative team to help us be more effective and more efficient. I'd also like to speak to the fact that through those expulsion panels, we get exposure to the types of threats that our schools face from dangerous people and how little we can do about it. And it's by those experiences that leads me to believe that we have to show leadership as a board on issues where we consider threats to the health and safety of our students, which mostly a lot of expulsion panel actions are about the health and safety of our students. So I think it's great that we're actually reinvigorating the expulsion panel process over the last year. I think it's being effective, and I think the way the administration has reorganized and restructured it to make sure that we're following process and procedure has been outstanding.
Further discussion, comments, questions? Mrs. Brezink?
I'm familiar with other school districts because of family members that attend other school districts, and they don't have such processes and procedures in a lot of local school districts. And I'm very proud that the process we have is very effective and very helpful to our school district, our students, our teachers, and our community. We need to be proud of that. And the people on the board who serve on that committee. It's time-consuming, but very worthwhile.
All right. Seeing no other comments, Sue, will you please take the roll call vote on passing the resolution to do our expulsion panels in smaller committees?
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek. Aye. Barbara Brezink.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
William Baumgartner.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
And Joseph Como.
Aye, passes 9-0. Moving on to our consent agenda. Darren, did we have any gifts given to us this
Yeah,
month?
2 gifts. Les Paul Middle School received $4,000 from Northwestern Mutual, matching friends from Paul and Kathleen Oman. This gift is to be used for math, science, and technology integration in the classroom. And Waukesha West received $1,000 from Mary and Stephen Hensel to be used specifically for the chemistry, art, choir, band, fishing, and Westwoods clubs.
Thank you. Thank you for those gifts. We appreciate those very much. Your agenda tonight includes various categories for approval. If any board member wishes to set aside an item for separate consideration, you will have that opportunity in just a bit. There were no expulsions, so I guess you would have that opportunity to set any other point aside if you wanted to discuss it. It still would be an open session, but we could discuss it separately. Okay, seeing none, Ms. Reinacek, will you please present the consent agenda for approval?
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this evening, the Human Resources and Compensation Committee approved of 10 resignations and 21 new full, part-time, and modified contracts. The information was provided in your packet, and an addendum was placed on your desks. Mr. President, I move that the consent agenda be approved as amended.
Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Dietz. Discussion? Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Barbara Brezink.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0.
Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Reinacek. Moving on to the superintendent's report, Dr. Gray.
Thank you. As Mrs. Voigt noted, we will be at the fair next week. We have a much bigger venue than the prior year. We're also partnering with eAchieve and Waukesha Education Foundation. So if you have the opportunity to make it to the fair, you can stop in, and we'll have multiple people manning the booths throughout the week that we're there, and we hope it's even more successful than it was last year. You've seen the information that we did receive our initial safety grant of $518,000. Those projects are underway. My understanding is that after all the grants have been paid out, there's still 40-some million left over, so we may be getting some additional funding if we're able to ask for those funds, if we can meet the criteria for the projects that they have for those. That doesn't mean that's the end-all on the safety, and I'll leave that perhaps for part of the referendum discussion this evening. Along with safety, the city is moving some polling places. This is not something we requested, but they have taken it upon themselves to move some polling places out of our schools. Hawthorne School will be moved to St. Williams campus. Meadowbrook will be voting at the Park Rec and Forestry Administration Building. Higher School will move to Fire Station number 2, and West High School will move to Fire Station number 3. And if we are in a situation where we do have to use some of our schools for polling places, the police department has offered to man that with a police officer. Now, in prior years, we've had trained security guards, multiple trained security guards at all the locations that needed them that didn't have an SRO. So we have been covered, we'll continue to be covered, and then we'll have a situation where some of these polling places will be moved out of our schools. I think the first election that would be impacted by this will be the November gubernatorial election. So that is good news. And if you've driven around the city, you know that we've got a lot of parking lot projects going. And if you tried to pull in here this evening, you know very well that this is one of many of those projects. So
looks like we're getting close, though.
Yeah, we have one more layer to go here. So probably next week, hopefully next week, we'll be able to resume parking over here. Fortunately, our neighbors to the east of us have graciously allowed us to use that parking area. Otherwise, I don't know where we'd be parking. parking downtown on the ramp and walking here, I guess. But any event, those are some of the big projects for the summer. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gray. Moving on to our committee reports, where most of the heavy lifting is done. We're going to start, as you know, we rotate who begins first this month. On deck first is Human Resource and Compensation Committee, given by Mrs. Reincheck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, we had approval of revisions to Professional Staff Handbook, Support Staff Handbook, and Co-Curricular Handbook. Each year, the administration reviews the employee handbook and makes recommendations for changes based on a variety of items such as budget, ease of administration and understanding, and employee suggestions. The committee and board are provided with the portions of the handbooks that contain the significant changes. Following committee board discussion, any needed changes were made and are presented for committee and board approval this evening. An itemized list of recommendations for changes was included in the packet. The official handbook, once approved, is valid online only to make available all hyperlinks and ensure the reader is using the most up-to-date version. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
I think this is an action item tonight.
Okay, I would move to approve the revisions to the Professional Staff Handbook, Support Staff Handbook, and Co-Curricular Handbook.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCaffrey. Discussion? This is something that we do on an annual basis as we review our handbook. There's been a number of changes. This is the second reading where we've had a chance to put our eyes on it. A little easier as time goes on. I remember the first year we put our handbook together. Holy cow, talk about a lot of work. That was a lot of time putting that first one together. It gets a little easier over time. We've covered most of the subjects, so now we're kind of just sort of rounding things out over time. So any other comments or discussion, questions? Okay, Sue, take the roll call vote on that, please.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Barbara Brezink.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0. Karen?
Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our policy committee, given by Mr. Baumgart.
Thank you. Tonight we have a couple action items and a couple of discussion items. The action items were read, first reading was held last month, and the two of them, one of them does have an adjustment to it, but first I'll give you policy 7250, naming of school facilities. Quite simply what we did in that one was add a sentence that says the approval of the name or name change will follow a two-reading process, that's like we do in policies themselves, at regular board meeting prior to the final approval. And I move for approval of that change to 7250, naming of school facilities.
Second to that?
I second it.
Second by Mrs. Voigt. Discussion? Mrs. Brezink?
Yes, we always remain concerned about recess. And
Now,
even
this is a different,
recess.
wrong policy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's coming
Yes.
up.
No, I have no.
Any questions or discussion with respect to
Facilities.
7250, naming of school facilities?
Sorry about that.
Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Barbara Brezink.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0. Bill?
Okay, the other policy for action is 8510, wellness policy. This policy is updated for two primary reasons. First, the policy language is revised to draw attention to the required elements of the wellness plan based on the USDA regulations revised in the year 2016. And secondly, the policy is revised to incorporate substantive updates to the wellness plan requirements occasioned by those regulations. Specifically, policies must identify goals for wellness, particular attention to evidence-based strategies, include standards for all food and beverage items, consistent with federal nutrition policies, and we did make an adjustment to the policy the way it was previously given to us. At the June 19th meeting, we changed the language regarding the recess. And Barbara, this is the one you're interested in.
Yes.
We changed the recess, which is on page 3, to read, all students in grades K through 5 shall be provided with a daily scheduled recess period. This recess, this recess shall not be used as a reward or a punishment. This does not preclude teachers from providing additional physical activity opportunities for our students. And at this point, I will move for approval of policy number 8510, wellness.
Is there a second to that?
I second it.
Second by Mrs. Voigt. Discussion? Mrs. Brezink.
I will always remain concerned that despite the fact that recess does show up on school curriculum schedules, et cetera, that it actually happens. I realize in bad weather, rainy weather, very, very cold weather, we keep the children inside because it's a sensible thing to do, but we should not stop recess under any terms to extend any instructional area of our curriculum. Recess is very, very important, and I just wanted to thank you for including that on the policy because it is so important. Children need to have an opportunity to get out of the building, get out of the classrooms, recreate, interact with each other, play. It's not a bad word. So thank you for that. And then I have one more, please, Mr. Baumgart. And it's about the food part.
Okay.
Okay. And I was just wondering if the district could let us know how we inform parents about the food practice, because I'm not sure that parents understand what our nutrition policy is, and they still send, the cupcakes with the frosting and et cetera, candy. And if that's really going to be a policy in practice, then I think the schools have to some way inform the parents. So how do we do that?
I believe that each school, beginning of the year newsletter or at different times of the year will remind
Reminders.
parents. Or if someone brings in an inappropriate treat, they will let parents know that that's not necessarily
But if an
appropriate.
inappropriate treat comes, we don't deny the kids, because I mean,
It
they
depends
see
on
it
the
and their tongues are
situation.
hanging out.
Probably not, but, our principals do a pretty good job of communicating with parents on these types of
Okay,
issues.
what about teacher treats? Because I, being a teacher, I know that teachers treat kids with sweets. It's not unusual. So we then need to remind our teachers that when they do provide treats, that they're within, the nutrition policy.
Yeah.
Okay? And then, I know it's been a practice in the past. I'm not sure if it continues to be a practice, but at one time, after lunch, before the kids would go out for recess or have their lunch recess, that some schools would sell ice cream bars or
Yeah,
ice cream
that has to
sandwiches.
be, anytime during the normal lunch period.
Yes.
That has to be discontinued. You cannot sell any kind of
Okay.
candy, soda, ice cream bars
Okay.
during the
During the
lunch period under the
okay.
USDA.
Could it be done at a recess time, or don't we want to have it done at all?
I don't think it's done at a recess time. I mean,
There isn't enough time.
At high school, potentially, but if you look at the types of things that are available to kids in our vending machines, they're all healthy.
Well-
It's waters, there might be some flavored milks, but generally it's all
But that's
healthy
secondary.
types.
That's secondary. It's
yeah.
not in the elementary
Yeah,
schools, and
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that.
I'm not aware of where we are, if we are, anyone that would be selling ice cream during, during a
of the-
recess time or
okay.
during the lunch period, because they're
Okay.
not supposed to be.
They're not supposed to be.
Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to have you agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bombard.
Sure.
Well, there is a part of this policy under the nutrition promotion. We actually we're asking for our schools to do a self-assessment using the Smarter Lunchroom Assessment. Is that Joe, this might be for you, is that a federal scorecard? Is that a scorecard we made up? How's that work?
It is, and it's aligned with the USDA Healthy Choice recommendations. So it really does impact what happens in and around the lunch periods. Schools do apply it to snacks. There was a presentation a year or so ago at the Teaching and Learning Committee where a school, one of our elementary schools, has taken a kind of a healthy snack focus. But it really, that is school by school. It has a lot of parent involvement to see if that's what they want to do. What we really have to focus on is those areas that are controlled through the food program. We can promote this through wellness, but in many instances, it's an option at the school level.
All right, further discussion, questions on 8510 wellness?
May I ask one more question? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mrs. Brezink.
Okay. Sometimes PTOs, PTAs like to have fundraisers, and it might include edible items. Are we going to discourage that also? I mean, it goes beyond pizza.
Mr. Cook?
We do have a policy that talks about the fundraising that schools can do, and it's got windows as to how many times fundraising can happen. So that type of fundraising would be covered under the fundraising policy.
Okay, just so it's not more than 2 times, right?
I believe it's 2 times per year. I'd have to
Okay.
look at it specifically.
Thank you.
Mr. McCaffrey?
Just a quick comment. I find it very sad that the U.S. Department of Agriculture tells us what we can sell at lunch. I'm disheartened that the federal government micromanages the school districts to that.
Well,
degree.
they contribute
Yeah.
quite a large
I contribute to them,
money.
though.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying.
So do
that-
you.
Yeah.
So
mean,
I find it sad that the federal government has
well, the federal government gives
important
us
things to worry about.
a lot of rules for the small amount of money that
For
they
the small
send to
amount
us.
of
So,
money that they give us is right.
yeah.
And some school districts have already turned that small amount of money back in. Thank you.
Mr. Bryan?
Well, I'd rather have them make rules and send us money than make rules and not send us money like some people do.
I'd rather have them not make rules, period.
Okay, back to the agenda, all right?
We allow for some discussion, Mr. Boomberg. All right, any
As opposed to
further,
opinions.
any further discussion?
All opinion.
Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote on the amendments to 8510.
Diane Voigt,
Aye.
Barbara Brezink.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0. Bill?
Okay. Following that, we have 2 discussion items, policies. This will be the first reading on them, hopefully bringing them back for action in August. First one is policy 2340, field trips and other district-sponsored trips. The big change in this one is on the bottom of page 2. You'll find it. Applications for overnight field trips are required no later than 18 months in advance of the first day of the trip. Overnight, out-of-state, and foreign travel will only be approved for students in grades 9 through 12. There's been a lot of discussion around this one, and I think a little, maybe Joe, you could give us a comments on why we figured we have to go a little bit stronger on this one, so.
You have, first of the change from 60 days to 18 months, a lot of the out-of-state field trips have a fundraising component that has started up to 12 months ahead of the approval of the field trip. So the approval would come to the Teaching and Learning Committee in the 60-day timeline, which is what our policy allowed, but the kids had already been raising money, so the Teaching and Learning Committee did not get an opportunity to weigh in on the appropriateness of the field trip prior to fundraising starting. So that's why you see that adjustment. The limiting of field trips, out-of-state overnight field trips to grades 9 through 12, we looked back over the course of the last 2 years, the number of out-of-state field trips, and we found that approximately 1/4 to 1/3 of the kids on the trips have a medication component that we need to address as a district. And when we looked into that, we had to work individually with different states, their Department of Health, and some of those trips were to foreign countries, so we had to work with the consulate in those countries. And what we found is that there's no uniform approach to medication distribution, which is the reason why we're recommending the grades 9 through 12, because what we're finding is that most doctors are allowing students who are freshmen to self-carry and self-administer their medication. but they're not doing that until kids reach that freshman year. We're not seeing that approval at the middle level. And so therefore, our nurses get into a situation where they have to delegate their license, which puts their license at risk, and where we have to designate a staff member to be responsible for, upwards of 30 to 60 students' medications, and that can be challenging.
Thank you, Joe. And that is again a first reading, be coming forward, be coming forward next month. Barbara?
Yes. I have two questions, please.
Sure.
Okay. It's on letter C on page 3, toward the top. It talks about amount of faculty supervision available and necessary, including adult-to-adult ratios, and it also refers to employee volunteers. And, I'm not so sure that we always know that volunteers are, don't we also take parent volunteers or community volunteers on some of our trips?
Sure.
Sure. How do we know that, they're safe to take?
Everyone has to have a background check. Anyone who volunteers in school or field trips or any time they're around students have to have a full background check.
So do you have them fill out a form of some kind, or do you just go ahead and do a
No,
background check?
I believe we need certain information from them, such as social security number and those types of things, so we
Okay.
can do a full background check. But I don't know if there's a particular form or.
But there's a practice.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have someone specifically that does that.
That's good. That's good, because I think this really, is going to provide for student safety. It appears then that our middle school students will not participate in any overnight trips. Is that correct?
I'm assuming that's the
Okay.
situation. yeah.
Okay. My question then is, do they participate in any, out of the school district tournaments that might require overnight?
This talks specifically to field trips. If it is a tournament, there is a section of this policy that talks about co-curricular and extracurricular
Okay.
Trips, so that, for instance, if your team were to go from a regional level to a state level, which would be an overnight trip, or a state level to a national level, this policy provides that opportunity for students. This is really designed for the field trip that is set to go out of state for several nights, the Washington DC trip, for instance, or a trip to New York, or a trip to, somewhere out on the West Coast, where it's more voluntary in nature, but many kids elect to do it. So it's not a sporting or a co-curricular trip.
Okay, so then the trip to camp that the sixth grade classes have historically taken will still be conducted and.
It's conducted as a day trip at some
Not
locations.
overnight anymore.
There is some locations that have done it as an overnight trip.
Yes.
Many locations have moved to a day trip.
Day trips only, okay.
Format.
But
So
some will still have the overnight
They
experience.
will not have the opportunity for overnight.
They will
anymore.
not, okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Mrs. Reinscheck?
Thank you. It says out of state. Why, if Camp Whitcomb Mason is in our state, why are we having trouble with that one?
We have troubles for the same reason with the medication distribution. In developing this language, we talked obviously to state departments of health, but we also reached out to many neighboring school districts, and the practice of overnight trips at the middle level is generally being discontinued for this medication issue. When students are with us over the course of a school day, there are medications that we distribute through our health rooms through the school day. When you start committing yourself to what happens at night and then the following morning, that adds many more students with many stronger medications that it's very difficult to accommodate. In some instances, those are opioid-based narcotics. In other instances, they're psychotropic medications to control mood. And those throw in another wrinkle for us to try to manage.
Okay.
Okay.
Got some input there, Mr. Mungbar, for
Right.
consideration.
And the other first reading is on 5460, graduation requirements. And we did some work on the language on that one on page 3. After one of our TV stations went off the loop on this one and started accusing us of all kinds of stuff, I won't bring that any further. Stop right there. A student may participate in the commencement exercises if the graduating senior's financial obligations to the school district of Waukesha have been satisfied. Students who demonstrate a financial hardship, this has been added, demonstrate a financial hardship will have their status reviewed on an individual basis through fee waivers. No fee waivers will be considered without a timely request being made by the family. It's a policy that's been in action for some time now, that we have allowed families to come in through actually to Darren's office if they have a difficult time meeting their financial obligations. It's quite simple to come forward to the office and explain the situation, and that gives them a waiver with various, things that they can do about it to allow the senior to graduate, to go across the stage at the graduation ceremony. It's worked in the past. It was probably not as well publicized as it should have been, but it is now being publicized, so we don't have to deal with this, hopefully, again. I don't believe we had very many this year. I don't know the number.
Not aware of any.
Nanny, see, we find a way to take care of the kids so they can be on stage, regardless of what you hear on TV. So, there. That will be coming forward for final approval in August also. We have no more discussion items on that. If we will be having our policy committee meeting, and I lost my place, but next week, Tuesday at 4 o'clock. We are moving, if you have not been paying attention, we are moving the policy meetings from 6 o'clock to 4 in the afternoon to facilitate all the members of the committee and the staff that work with us on that.
That's the 17th, Mr. Baumgart?
That's the 17th, thank you. I was
Okay.
looking for the number in my mind, I lost it.
And it's at 4 o'clock?
Yes,
Okay.
and that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baumgart. Moving on to our Technology Committee, chaired by Mr. Dietz.
The Technology Committee did not meet within the last month, Mr. President, so no report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Finance and Facilities, given by Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Como.
Nice shot.
I've been called way worse.
I'm sure you have. We had 3 action items. First is the approval to recommend to Board of Education initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $60 million. For the last 2 years, the district has been working to develop a plan to address safety and security and the overall maintenance needs of the district's facilities. Approval of the initial resolution and the resolution calling for the referendum election, which is the next action item to be considered, would allow the members of our school community to decide if the facility plan outlined in your packet is the correct path forward. To summarize, the proposed plan would provide for increased security and address prioritized maintenance needs at the elementary level and STEM sites, increased security, including the construction of new secure entrances, renovate instructional spaces, improve site accessibility, and address building maintenance needs at Les Paul, Butler, and Horning Middle School. Increase security and address prioritized maintenance needs at each high school, including the construction of a new secure entrance at South High School. The areas to be addressed with this facility improvement plan would impact all levels of district facilities. A summary outlining the scope of work to be completed is in your packet. This proposal was developed with significant input from members of our school community via over 30 community group presentations and meetings, 2 community focus groups, and a community-wide survey which had over 6,500 responses. The general theme of the survey results showed a strong interest in improving the security of our facilities and a willingness to reinvest in our current schools versus the construction of new schools. The plan as presented accomplishes these items. The committee has presented a draft initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $60 million, which will allow the district to address the outlined work and place it on the November 2018 ballot for community consideration. The amended resolutions are on your desk for your review. The committee approved the resolution as amended, and I so move.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dietz. Discussion. Mr. O'Brien.
I would just say that we did get a very nice summary. We'll be having more detail. If this passes tonight, there'll be more effort to provide a lot more detail to the public in advance of the election in November. So 26% is for safety and security, 22% is estimated for capital maintenance, and 52% of it is for building and educational improvements. So we do have a pre-start on the plan. The exact details of what we will do will be coming forward after we make if we proceed with this in a positive manner tonight. If we reject it, we don't have to worry about it.
Mr. McCaffrey.
Just a quick comment. I voted against this in committee last night because this was an election year for me. I talked to a lot of people related to the referendum since we started, and I really did not have a strong sense of people saying we want this. There was a lot of angst with the people that I talked, which there always is, about raising taxes and going to referendum and issuing bond funding. So I will be voting against it this evening as well.
Mr. Baumgart.
I appreciate Patrick explaining his position on that, and though I disagree with it, and I think we should remember that we are dealing with a tax rate that it still has us at the bottom of the scale when it comes to districts in the area and districts even in the state. So we are not anywhere near overtaxing. This is, I suppose it's risky to say this, but I don't think we're overtaxing anybody on this one. We are on the cheap end.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes. One of the things we found in the survey, and I think it was established in the referendum that was passed long, long ago, the one that we had that was succeeded and exceeded by the largest margin, is that the community as a whole, first of all, they don't like the vote to raise their taxes. So if you walk around pre-election and ask, do you want me to raise your taxes? 9 out of 10 people are going to say no. I mean, that's a very straightforward thing. But when it comes to having the funds available to maintain our facilities versus building a new school, it was a clear message that a professional scientific survey said this is the way to go. And it was a clear message we received several years ago when we wisely passed by a fairly large margin the maintenance portion of that referendum. The operational portion was a lot tighter, and those are hard to pass, and I would never really support going down that path. But we've always known that to make and keep our old but very strong buildings modern and secure and current with educational needs of our population, that every 10 to 15 years we have to consider a referendum like this and ask our community to support us. I normally don't like referendums after all my past histories with ones, but in this particular case, I will be supporting it. I think that's part of being a leader in the community, and sometimes it's very painful, but I don't think this is a painful one based on the survey results we've taken.
Mrs. Reinacek.
Thank you. Can I please ask Kurt to repeat the percentages that you just said?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
26% is allocated currently for safety and security, 22% is for capital maintenance, and 52% is for building and educational improvements.
Okay. Can I address you now? Okay. So I talked at the meeting about some questions that I get about it, and it's hard to explain because there are so many facets of this. And I said, it's not even touching the elementary buildings for security, safety and security. And then Darren said it actually is, which was not on our paper, but I understand that he was condensing that. And so when we polled our constituents and asked them, okay, would you like this new middle school? They basically said no. But would you like more security? They said yes. And so when I read this, the resolution, it says that it's for $60 million for the public purpose of paying the cost of improving safety and security at district elementary, middle, and high schools, which includes, and then it lists everything: equipment upgrades, building renovations and improvement upgrades, additions, remodeling and renovations at Les Paul Central Campus, Horning and Butler Middle Schools, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning upgrades, classroom, lab reallocation, and additions at South High School, site and surface improvements of various school buildings, and acquisition and installation of fixtures and equipment. If we're asking people to give us the money to to do something with it. I just feel like we should be putting the valued amount, what we're spending the most on, at the top. And if it's not safety and security, we shouldn't put that first, because that's kind of saying, okay, we're gonna make the school safe and secure by doing this. So can we say 52%, 26 and 22%, and just be forthcoming about where it's going to be, the majority is going to be spent, and just say?
Are you asking to change the resolution, or are you asking to change the format of this informational page?
I'm asking to take off improving safety and security at district elementary, middle, and high schools, which includes, I would like to change the resolution to paying the cost of equipment upgrades, building renovations, and putting improving and safety and security not at the first.
Mr. O'Brien?
It's, these, I think as we discussed it tonight, this gets drafted by our legal counsel so that we have a very accurate, where this has to be approved accurately when it goes on the ballot. And when you start changing it and wordsmithing it, it's going to make it difficult for us to approve it tonight. We'd have to take it back to committee and probably rework it. As we discussed at committee, the exact dollars and the exact ratios and where the money will be spent will be defined once we approve this. So they didn't want to put the exact, and also it makes it for a very long question, the exact dollars in the, for each individual item. Once we do the communication, I think this document is a good starting point. The only difference between what you asked for and what's in the document is the order in which it's presented in the document. People are going to want to see these documents, and this is the type of document that the Freeman will be publishing. And in fact, I directed, the Freeman asked for direction on that, and I suggested that they take a look at this document, and we'll be providing more information later on. I do want to say in the document, it's clear that the wealth of projects associated with this referendum are for Butler, Horning, and Les Paul middle schools, and after that, South High School. It's also clear in this document that we have for the district elementary schools to create secure main entrance and adjacent administrative offices, add lockable interior doors to partition off school sections, and install additional security cameras. And then we also have replace exterior site components like asphalt, roofs, and windows for the elementary schools. Butler is not ADA acceptable, so there's a big cost to adding an elevator for Butler. I think universally the board has said that we should make that school ADA compatible, and that's probably one of our biggest cost items. So I think we're trying to be very clear about what we're trying to do here. There's other things I'd like to spend money on. STEM is one of them, but obviously we felt that the amount of funds that we could go to the taxpayers for should be limited, and this is the way we decided to approach it.
Mr. Clark?
Actually, Mr. O'Brien did a nice job of covering the topics I was going to. If you get into putting in, say, the percentages in there, those are all based on budgeted dollars. But if you say in there, I'm going to spend X on safety and security,
You're talking the resolution.
Yes, the resolution itself. So really, I think the hierarchy or the ranking you're talking about is an informational item and not, as Mr. O'Brien said, the goal of the resolution and ultimately the ballot question is define the scope of potential work, and the information breaks out the costs into some broad categories that we've identified in the handout.
And there are legal ramifications as to how you have to write that, and that's why we have to go to legal counsel for the resolution. However, if this resolution does pass, one of the next tasks is for this district to be able to communicate the facts to our community. This is just a summary sheet, and my understanding, Darren, is that we're going to be coming forth with a lot more information, a lot more detail. Is that correct?
We have, from our conversation on Monday, I think one of the general questions was, the matrix is a nice job, but I think what people, or at least the conversation we had was, what's being specifically done at the elementary level, the middle level, and the high school level? So we're working on a document that, it's really the same information as the matrix, but it's more of a narrative and a story. But further information which we can provide, we have it. We just haven't put it in the format because we didn't know if the scope was going to be changing at the board level, so we didn't put a lot of energy into creating those things, but
When you didn't know if we were even going to do it.
we still, and actually, we still don't.
We still don't know, yes.
But we will have, just like we did for the study and the master planning part of it, we will have a designated website page that will go live this week if everything is approved, that will start supplying that additional information and allow people to look at the old information, the survey, and all those other things that led us to where we are tonight.
I just want to add one more point on that. The definitions, safety and security capital, those are fluid as well, because the additions and the renovations at the middle schools in South also provide for safety and security too, but they're included in those additions numbers. And so I think the purpose of the percentage is just to give you an idea. They're simple definitions. They weren't, I mean, if you start breaking out how much of the additions and renovations at the middle school really affect safety, that number would be a lot bigger.
And one of the things that Darren gave as an example was lighting. You could consider that safety, a safety item, but we didn't put it in safety. We put it in, which category did we put it in? Capital maintenance. So, you know, we didn't want to, try and load the numbers up. Yeah, I think we're actually being quite transparent. And with this process, I mean, we've had so many meetings on it, and we're going to continue to get more details if it passes tonight. Yes, Mrs. Reincheck.
Thank you. What about the little old lady who will never go to the website? What will be on the ballot when it says, would you like to spend your tax dollars on?
That's what this is. And this has to be stated in a particular, no, not that one, number one, the one with the number one on it.
Excuse me.
We got new ones at our desk tonight.
Okay.
Those are the updated ones. Yeah, so the one, so you got, everyone should have gotten a copy
It says improving
of,
safety and security first.
yep, this is how we're presenting it tonight. Just because it's first doesn't mean that that's where the most money is being spent. Ms. Reincheck? Did you want to say something more?
I think it does. I believe it does, and that affects my decision. When our board, okay, so we are given a $160 million operating budget to make sure our schools are operating the best that they can. And when we want to go outside of that, we ask the people that give us the money if we should. And this board didn't ask the people when we went and borrowed $8 million extra to do the other improvements. But now we're asking for money, and the first thing that we're saying it's going to be spent for is improving safety and security, which I see that we could argue all day whether something's really on this topic or this, and I understand. But with the hypersensitivity right now of trying to make our schools safe and secure, I feel like they feel that that's what this whole package is going to do. And I just want, by putting that first, that's just, I just feel that's a false sense.
Mr. Baumgart?
If Karen feels seriously about this, she could file for an amendment and we could vote on it.
Mr. Bryan?
I agree, that's the normal process, and that's probably what, if she feels serious, that's probably what we should do. I'd have a very hard time, even though I somewhat agree with what she's trying to say, changing the language of the proposed document tonight, because it does accurately project what we're planning to do with the funds that we're asking the taxpayers to support. But until she offers an amendment, we probably shouldn't be discussing it in such detail. So,
Okay, that's correct.
Ms. Roddy?
Yes, thank you. I agree with the sentiments of Mrs. Reinachek. When first reading this, in my opinion, it does give the perception that a majority of, different from the breakdown that's here to what's in the language here. My initial perception is that we're going to be doing this to improve the safety and security of the district, and this is what, and it gives a vague description of what's going to be done, but in also speaking with constituents, it's, the question that comes back to me is, well, what are we doing with the money that the state is giving us? How much of that is going to be used, or can be used, instead of having to ask for this on top of that? So I guess just to make it known, the way it's written here, I wouldn't vote yes on it.
So there are potentially a number of safety and security items that we could pull also out of the building and educational improvements and capital maintenance, and that percentage could change for safety and security, really. I mean, it's a total of $60 million to be applied to the whole list that follows, the entire list. It doesn't give percentages at all. It doesn't give a breakdown at all. Mr. O'Brien?
I think it's a little bit of misreading of the resolution. It talks about paying the cost of improving safety and security at the district elementary, middle, and high schools. And when it comes to the district elementary, middle, and high schools, there is safety and security in all three of those items. So that's the first thing, because that item is across all those different schools, and which includes equipment upgrades and building renovations as part of that. I don't see how you can change it, reword it, improve it, and make it better. I myself don't see that. Mr. McCaffrey.
Why don't you just remove safety and security then and just put the cost of improving district elementary, middle?
That's what I
That,
said
I mean,
earlier.
that would be the only way you could do it right now, tonight, without some sort of legal.
Because I believe a significant portion of this dollars is for safety and security. And I think that needs to be in the 26% is a significant portion. That 26% of $60 million is $12 million, $13 million. That's a lot of money for.
It's about 15 million.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of money.
Quarter.
Yeah,
Right.
It's a quarter.
All I'm saying is, the only way you could do it would be to remove safety and security and just have improving district elementary, middle, and high schools.
Wow.
That's my only suggestion. I don't want to debate the fact of that 25 or a quarter's doing this or a quarter's doing that. All I'm saying is that's the only thing you could do to not have to put it back to legal. Remove those words. That's all I'm saying. I'm not debating the percentages. I don't want to debate the percentages. I'm just giving what you could do. That was the question that was asked.
We could also move those words, safety and security, prior to the improvements, semicolon, for safety and security.
Mr. Como, I believe Mr. Baumgart's right. If we're going to change this, we need a motion, and then we can debate the change. I mean, now we're debating something that's not on the table.
It's germane, though. Mrs. Reincheck?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion.
An amendment?
An amendment to the resolution. And can we discuss what this is going to be, or do I state
No, you have to make
exactly?
the motion first.
Okay. I'll make the motion to amend the resolution.
To say what? How are you amending it? You have to be specific.
Okay. For the public purpose of paying the cost of improving district elementary, middle, and high schools. So we're striking
So you're moving to strike the word safety and security?
at.
And the word at.
At, okay. Okay, is there a second to that amendment? Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Second by Mr. McCaffrey. Now discussion on the amendment of striking the word safety and security at. Mr. O'Brien.
Like I said, if we strike safety and security and it's more than 25% of the activity associated with the referendum, I don't think we're being very clear with the voters about what the referendum is about. So I will oppose without much further debate, because we talked about a lot already tonight, the change. That's,
Mr. Baumgart?
I agree very much with that. The words safety and security are an important element of what we're trying to do. I don't think that the percentages are related that much to trying to convince people that this is, to trying to tell people this is what we're trying to do. If you read that, cost of improving safety and security at district and blah, 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 includes equipment upgrades, building renovations, and a whole bunch of other stuff which maybe is not in that percent. I don't think the percentage is an important part of this resolution whatsoever, but I do think the words safety and security are an extremely important part of this resolution. And what we were told by the community when we surveyed them, we got a clear message. Safety and security is an important piece of what you guys wanted to do.
Ms. Reincheck?
Could we put improving safety and security at the very last sentence? So it would say, and acquisition and installation of fixtures and equipment.
We're discussing the amendment that's on the floor right now. Only the amendment that's on the floor, which is striking the words safety and security at. Any further discussion on the amendment? Mrs. Reincheck?
Okay, so when this is done, then I can make another amendment to actually put it at the end?
Sure, we can make as many amendments to this as we want this evening. Ms. Brezink?
Is this whole paragraph going to appear on the ballot, or will it be just the one where it says question one?
Ms. Brezink, we're on number one. I'm not sure you're
Yeah,
on
we're on the resolution only.
Okay. Yeah,
We're
I
not
got it.
looking at the ballot question
Mix them
yet.
up, yeah.
That will be coming up.
Question, what about the question?
That will be coming up in another action item tonight.
This whole thing, yeah, that's what I'm wondering. This
So
whole
we
thing
are
will be on the
talking
ballot.
specifically on the amendment to strike safety and security at. Any further comments on that? I agree with Mr. Baumgart and Mr. O'Brien that safety and security, not only for the survey, have people been strongly weighing in to have improvement in that area, but this board, for as long as I've been on it, the Finance and Facilities Committee has been pushing for capital improvements and pushing to make sure that the safety and security of our students and our environment has been something that we take seriously. And we've spent years working on this, years working on it. And safety and security has always been at the heart of it. Mr. Dietz.
Personally, I can't support anything without the word safety and security in there. I think that's what we as board members is all about. And I think we've heard it for the last few months that that's a huge priority, and it begins and ends with safety and security for me. So that's my comment.
Mrs. Brezink.
If we believe our job as school board members is to listen to constituency, then I believe we need to leave that in, because they have told us several times now strongly, they've written it, they've called us, they want safety and security in our schools, and I agree, we need to do it, and I think it needs to stay in there because it's what the constituents are requesting.
Okay. Any other comments? Ms. Roddy.
Offhand, I apologize. I don't remember what the percentage was coming back from the surveys. What percentage are we that the constituents said that they are pro dollars for safety and
Darren,
security?
do you have that information?
I don't have that with me.
We're looking it
No,
up.
I don't either, and I
We're looking
apologize.
it
I
up.
should have.
I thought it was 75 to 80%,
Okay.
but don't go on my memory, please.
Yeah, all respondents was 65%. It also
That's
had
wrong.
it also had the highest rating for, if you remember, we talked about people who don't have a tie to us, don't have a student in our school, and they're not employees. That was also the highest rated issue in the survey for them, for that group, which represents about 75% of the households.
And what about the group just the group who have students in? You did all?
Everybody is 65%. Parents, it's 70%.
Okay, that was the one that I was remembering, was the parents. Ms. Reincheck.
Thank you. And I agree with what you're saying, Mr. Dietz and Barb. But if it's not safe, okay, I agree. We went on the tours. I was there, and we know what makes something safe and secure. But this isn't all safe and secure. So yes, I agree that we need a package that explains safety and security. Yes.
And that's why there's a semicolon. And then you go on to the next batch. So after the word improvements, there's a semicolon. And then when you get to the end of South High School, there's a semicolon. Those are actually separate sections. Trying to be more specific, the semicolon indicates that. Okay, any other comments on the safety and security at words being stricken from the full resolution? Okay, Sue, let's take a roll call vote on the amendment.
Barbara Brezink?
Careful, yeah.
Yeah, no vote means you don't want it stricken, you want it to be included. A yes vote means you want it stricken.
Right. No.
William Baumgart?
No.
Patrick McCaffrey?
Abstain.
Karen Reinacek?
Yes.
Kurt O'Brien?
No.
Amanda Roddy?
No.
Greg Dietz?
No.
Diane Voigt?
No.
Joseph Como?
No. It fails 7 noes, 1 yay, 1 abstinence. Okay, going back then to the original resolution, it will be as worded. So again, we're looking at number 1 here. Further discussion on the resolution as it was originally presented. Mr. Bryan.
Just to go back, because I know Ms. Ronachek had asked if there is a desire for another proposed amendment, you know, that's an option for anyone on the board at this point in time.
Ms. Roddy.
Okay, correct me if I'm getting ahead of myself here. So, Mr. O'Brien, you said that this would be given to the public.
This
Well,
is
it's
available
technically
to the
already out,
public
but-
today.
Right.
We will be coming up with a more refined, more detailed explanation. This is explained at F&F. Until we go through this process of getting the board to approve what we're asking them to approve tonight, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to ask administration to go in a tremendous amount of effort and detail to
Right.
itemize each individual thing. So they're first asking us to approve these 2 items, and then they'll provide all the detail to the public, because that's all we can do is provide facts to the public as to what this money will be spent on.
Okay, so, and this might not be the right, but I'm going to say anyways. So when, because somebody had mentioned lights. Lights is a security thing, but it's not necessarily listed in security, it's listed in the capital.
Right.
So when and if this goes forward, and can't we just put that in security to actually show everything that's going to be done with security?
Well, we could actually, I mean, like I said, some of the additions and renovations are listed under that section and not safety, yet they do increase safety, you know, because of access to the building and so on. I mean, once we get through this, whatever fact sheet we develop, we can develop however we want, as long as it adds up to no more than $60 million. So, I mean, we are able to put the facts out there any way we see fit, as long as it's proper and it doesn't exceed $60 million. But the resolution itself, I think, has to, I mean, this is a recommendation of bond counsel, and the fact that the way it reads, the safety and security at the so on, the elementary, middle, and so on, includes those renovations, remodeling, and so on. So I think it depends on how you read it, but even though it's first, literally all these other things mentioned do have an impact on safety and security, except for maybe surface improvements and HVAC, but the
Yeah.
rest do have an impact on safety and security.
Mr. O'Brien?
I think the issue is we're trying to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, that's
This,
what I'm
this,
saying. I
this is the
apologize for
horse.
this. Yeah.
The
No, I
explanation
understand.
is the cart. And we do have to cover the cart in the future, but right now, we're just trying to get the horse out, into the starting gate. So,
And we have, at FNF, we had a fair amount of details to provide to Mr. Clark as to how we want some of those details to be presented. And so I would say if this passes, and as we start to get that information out to our public, if you see or have any ideas as to how to present it differently, feel free to make those comments to Mr. Clark and/or at FNF. But communication will be the primary next big step if this resolution is passed tonight. Mrs. Reinacek.
Thank you. So if someone were to ask you, what is this referendum about? Would you say it's about safety and security? This is to make our schools safe and secure?
I would say yes to that. I would also say that there's a number of capital improvements that we've needed to make for many years and that we cannot afford to make with the regular money that we get through our capital improvements budgeting process each year. So we need to inject additional monies for that, and that there are some other changes that we want to make to our building. So I would fall back. There's a lot of information on this sheet. I mean, anyone that I've showed this sheet to, they've appreciated it, actually. They said, wow, this covers a lot in great detail. Now, you guys might be asking for more detail, but. All right. I think we're ready to take the vote on the resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $60 million. Sue, will you take the roll call vote?
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
aye.
Amanda Roddy.
No.
Karen Reinacek. No. Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
No.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Barbara Brezink.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 6-3. Kurt?
Okay. I'm glad I'm having such a short report tonight. Let me get my glasses back on. Okay. The second action item is approval to recommend to the Board of Education resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of an initial resolution authorizing issuance of general obligation bonds in amount not to exceed $60 million. This would be item number 2 laying on your desk tonight in reference to this. As mentioned earlier, this is the second resolution required to place the facility improvement plan on the November 2018 ballot. The resolution providing for a referendum election has been reviewed by the Finance Committee and Bond Council. The committee approved the resolution as amended, and I so move.
Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Bungart. Discussion? Mr. Bungart.
I want to be, for everybody, real clear on what this is, and quite simply, I think this is just a logistics thing and putting a piece of paper together that has all the pieces filled in so that we can take this to ballot someday.
Properly filled in is
Well,
the key.
yes.
Legally,
Legally and properly
there's a
filled in.
lot that goes into this.
There's really nothing issue-related in here, from what I understand.
Joe, you want me to?
Yeah, Mr. Clark.
The first resolution establishes the amount. The second resolution authorizes the election and gets us on the ballot. That's the purpose of the two separate resolutions. So they go in tandem with each other, but they do have specific tasks.
Mrs. Brezink?
So what will the ballot say? You know, it says question 1. That doesn't really tell voters any details. Is that what it's going to state? Shall the foregoing resolution of the Board of Education of the School District of Waukesha be approved?
If you, and I'm looking at packet number 2.
Yes.
If you switch to
Yes, that's
the
it.
back of the page.
Yes.
Where it has yes and no on one page. The actual ballot is on that previous page. And what it is it's the first paragraph
Okay,
from the packet that we just spent a lot of time on.
so that paragraph will be included with the question?
Yes.
Yeah, with yes or no at the bottom of it,
Okay,
yes.
good, because otherwise, people won't know what they're voting for.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the struggle with, as we've talked about, bond council has to describe what we're
Yes,
doing. The
yes.
downside is they have to describe what we're doing, and it gets to
Right.
be rather lengthy.
Right. Thank
So-
you. Thank you.
And in a very specific legal manner. I mean, that's why you saw hesitation by some board members to even amend the resolution. The first resolution that we voted on. Further discussion? Okay, Sue, let's take the roll call vote.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek. No. Barbara Brusink.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
No.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
No.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 6-3. Kurt?
I guess I have more work to do. Okay, item number C. Approval of the East Charter School contract. The committee was presented with a new 5-year 2018-23 renewal of the East Charter School contract, which serves students in grades 9 through 12 who are at risk of not graduating. The committee approved the East Charter School contract as presented, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. O'Brien, second by Mr. McCaffrey. Discussion on renewing the charter school for East. Mr.
Well,
Bungard.
quite simply, this school has provided education for kids that otherwise maybe wouldn't have had an education. And since we moved it from its previous location, there's been a significant improvement. I know it sounds funny because of I'm trying to relate it to the relocation. The culture, the attitude, the atmosphere, everything has improved to the kids, and they're enjoying going to school much more than we ever saw before. So I think this is an important charter school to maintain.
May I add something, please?
Mrs. Brusink?
I would encourage everybody to go to East High School. To me, it's one of the most positive places that we have in Waukesha. These kids, when they're in their regular home school, just don't thrive. They go over there, they thrive, they become successful, they feel so good, and feeling good is really a major part of success. So I see wonderful teachers, great success that we don't see if they would stay in their home schools. So thank you, Mr. Baumgart. I totally agree. Please go over there and get the feeling of success.
After school starts.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Further questions or discussion on renewing the charter school for East High School? Okay, Sue, take the roll call vote.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Barbara Brusink.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0. Sue? Kurt?
Well, we have a couple information items. The monthly budget report, revenues and expenditures continue to be within budget limits for both the general and special education fund. The district is operating in accordance with our approved budget and all other funds as well. Second information item is an updated 2018-2019 preliminary budget and tax levy. The preliminary 2018-19 budget was presented and is balanced. Next month, the committee will be asked to consider approving the preliminary budget in preparation of the budget hearing, which will be held on September 12th. 2018. Final budget approval is scheduled for the end of October. From there, we go on to a discussion item, and the discussion item is the budget hearing date, which we just talked about. The committee has scheduled the budget hearing for Wednesday, September 12th, 2018, to allow for citizen input on the 2018-2019 preliminary budget. The hearing will be held in the boardroom at the Lindholm Administration Building. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
The last item is discussion. Is there any?
Well,
Mr. Bungard?
I want to clear, so the budget hearing date is set for the 12th. It's also a board meeting day.
And that's worked pretty well. We intentionally did
Can
that.
do it in front of it?
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, it's usually been 15 minutes or less.
Right.
And it seems like that's a good time too. It's more convenient for our constituents to show up on the night of a board meeting as opposed to a completely
So do
separate
you have a
night.
specific time for us?
We did not.
6:30.
6:30.
All right.
That's what it's been in the past.
Yep.
I did it in pencil, so that if you
Okay.
change it, we can.
Mrs. Brusink, did
Yes,
you?
I just wanted to recommend that we leave
Okay.
a half an hour
That would go
because
like at 6 then.
there could be a lot of people that want to talk, and 15 minutes doesn't seem like very much time. So
We've typically
6:30.
done 6:30,
Yep,
and then
I would agree.
we have a 15-minute break typically, but
maybe.
if there are more people who show up, that
That's
should
right.
cover it. So.
That's right, thank you.
Thank
Very
Mr. Brown.
considerate.
Mrs.
Okay.
Reincheck.
Mrs. Reincheck.
Thank you. What about the HR meeting?
That would just be moved up a half hour early as well.
So the HR meeting will be at 6?
6, right?
Thank you.
Any other further discussion? Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Moving on to our Teaching and Learning Committee, given by Mr. McCaffrey.
I have no report this evening, Mr. President.
Safety and Security Committee, given by Ms. Ratty.
Yes, thank you. The first meeting of the Safety and Security Committee took place on Thursday, June 21st. The committee had 0 action items, 2 information items, and 1 discussion item on the agenda. The information item is that was that of the status of the school safety grant application. Dr. Cook gave an update on the school safety grant application that was submitted on June 5th. The next information item was a school safety resolution. Dr. Cook provided background on the 2 drafts of the safety resolution. The committee discussed the drafts and concluded that the drafts do not reflect the sentiments of the committee members. The committee directed administration to draft a 3rd resolution for the committee to review, which will be brought to the Safety and Security Committee at their next gathering. The 3rd item is a discussion item. That was the administrative calendar of topics for safety and security. Again, Dr. Cook and Darren Clark provided a calendar of topics that administration will be bringing to the Safety and Security Committee. The next committee meeting will be held on Thursday, tomorrow, July 12th at 6 p.m. And that, Mr. President, completes the Safety and Security Committee report.
Item C is a discussion item. Mr. Bryan?
Oh, excuse me.
A little curious, I mean, point of order, if
At the committee level, it was scheduled for discussion. And during discussion, you can direct administration to do that.
discussion item at the full board meeting, if you rejected an action.
There was nothing that came out of it at that level, and we're going to continue our discussion.
There was
So
something that came out of it because nothing happened.
No, well, we're going to continue the discussion of the resolution tomorrow evening.
This resolution.
There were 2 resolutions that were presented previously.
Yes,
And there is a
and that
3rd resolution
Okay.
that administration was directed to put together
Okay.
during the first safety and security meeting.
Yes.
And they did so, and that was distributed in your packet, and that will be discussed tomorrow night and for potential action.
Thank you.
Question?
Yes.
For two different things. Number one, did we take care of getting it on TV tomorrow night?
No.
Haven't been able to talk to anybody about that, Mr. Bungart?
Well, I think that's been made clear that the community wants that on televised. So if you're trying to hide something, don't. Put it on TV. You got a clear message tonight, and we got a clear message a couple weeks ago about this has to be televised to the community. So I'm encouraging you to get that fixed. Number 2, the community also has been waiting for this for about 4 months now. So I'm just encouraging you to be, committee, to get on with the show here because it's going on and on and on. And it's beginning to look like let's delay this until people forget about it. I'm just telling you what the feelings are.
I think it's pretty tough to forget about it as we're receiving emails and discussions.
I hope you notice
and
that.
comments. So there's no intention to do that. Not on my part. Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, I'm being constructive. Let me turn on my mic, I'm sorry. Being constructive, and I think that's the intent of the committee, the Security and Safety Committee.
That's the intent of all committees.
Excuse me, I'm trying to be positive on this discussion, and let's just try to keep it in that way. Being constructive, there's a proposal, there's 2 proposals that were submitted to the committee, and the committee apparently asked for a 3rd proposal to be prepared by administration. In our packet was the 2 proposals that were submitted for the committee, and there was another one that administration has apparently put together. that was in our board packet. I kind of expected us to have an opportunity to discuss that as a board tonight, to see how we felt about that. We also know that the community members that submitted their resolution have offered a revised one that they'd like to have considered. And I've also sent through an amended on mine to clarify, to make sure that we had the directive for WASB added as an amendment to mine.
And just like we do for all committees, we let the committees do their work first, and then they bring it forth before the board as they decide things. So we're following that same process.
What I'm trying to say is that we're trying to be clear in what the process is as we're going through this, that I want the community to know that these things are still on the table, going before the committee, they're still before the board, and we're still working on improving the resolutions, hopefully to a point where we can get some consensus from the board.
That is accurate. There's no burying going on here.
What?
No burying or delaying going on here.
Who's on the committee, Mr.?
It's chaired by Ms. Roddy, myself is on the committee, and Mr. McCaffrey. All right, Ms. Roddy, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I guess just a question with regards to it being televised. I know that before the committee was, or when the committee was approved, it was stated that it wouldn't, and this might not be in the right forum for this, but it stated that it wasn't going to be televised just because of some items can be sensitive at times. Given the fact.
Open meetings.
Well, right, but we have other committees that aren't televised as well, such as HR, technology. We have others that aren't. And I don't know the reasons why those are and aren't. But what my question here is, given the request, while this item is on our, on our agenda, they simply be televised? And again, I don't know if this is the proper place to ask
We
you.
have to coordinate that.
Okay.
And I think we have given administration a strong message.
Okay. I just.
So we need to coordinate that.
Sounds good. Because I personally don't have an opposition to it, given the requests that, that are coming forth.
So, Mr. Comer, are you saying it's a board decision or an administrative decision to
No,
televise?
let's just end this right now. Let's televise this tomorrow night. It's
Thank
fine.
you.
It's a board decision. Yeah, I mean, it's up to the board what committees are televised.
Yeah. Let's televise it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why we wouldn't. It's
Quit
very
dancing
important.
around and do
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Let's televise it.
All right, anything else on this? Okay. Moving on to other business. Are there any recommendations for board or committee business? All right. We don't have a need for executive session for item B. We do have a need for item D, and we may have a need for item C. So item C, what that is referring to is the information regarding the Larson property. I don't know if anybody wants to go into closed session for that, but if so, they could make that motion now. Otherwise, we will be looking at potentially approving the sale of the Larson property. So if someone wants to go into closed session, I would suggest that they read, they ask for item C to be approved. But we also, if someone does want to ask for item C, I'd also ask them to state item D, because we do have a need for that. So I don't know if that made everyone confused, or I'd take questions on that.
Let me
if you
try
want.
it. I am not interested in item C, so I'll move to adjourn to executive session per Wisconsin statutes 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, performance evaluation of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
Second.
Okay, we just take a roll call vote on that, Sue?
Sure. Amanda Roddy,
Aye.
Diane Voigt,
Aye.
Barbara Brusink.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek. Greg Dietz.
Aye.
William Baumgart. Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0. We will go into closed session immediately, but just so you know, we will be reconvening into open session to discuss the sale of the Larson property. Have a good evening, everyone. Okay, we've reconvened into open session, and we do have one matter before us. Mr. O'Brien?
We have an offer received and approved by the Facilities and Finance Committee, and I move that we accept this offer for the sale of district property on Highway 164, tax keys WKT 1404996 and WAKT T1429999 in the amount of $575,000 for the property that we traditionally call the Larson property.
Second, is there a second to that?
I so move. Second.
Mr. Clark, do you want to give us
South on 164.
on the big church?
Sure, this
Yeah.
goes back a ways. We've been, I mean,
Make sure we
the
turn
original
our-
purchase
make sure we
was
turn our mics
96,
on.
I think, so, but this conversation with this buyer has been going on for a year, and the board had actually approved a previous sale agreement, but the town of Waukesha turned down the rezoning. We adjusted the price in exchange for the buyer removing all contingencies, meaning we're not tied to the rezoning, because that has been a hurdle for us a few times in the past of trying to get rid of this. So this is a totally clean offer. There is no contingencies. The last contingency on our side is board approval. But this is a property that we've been actively, and then inactively, and then actively again trying to sell for,
Couple
I
decades.
don't know, Bill, decades? Or,
Couple decades,
Yeah, so-
yes.
As we said, there was just something that a previous business manager was never able to accomplish, so we want to give credit to Mr. Clark for all his hard work on this.
Any other discussion or questions on the, what's known as the Larson property?
You're okay with that price? I have no idea.
We originally purchased the farm in '92 for $238,000. We're selling it for $575,000. And quite honestly, if I read the tea leaves and the rezoning politics that go on, this is really an unsellable piece of land for us if there's a rezoning requirement. And I don't want, maybe I'm out speaking, and maybe Mr. O'Brien will either concur.
Let me just say that the original offer that we accepted with contingencies was just slightly higher than this. So it was a minor discount to waive all contingencies. So that minor discount was in the amount of about $25,000. So we ended up, we feel we have a very good deal here. And we believe the offer is beneficial to both sides.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Mr. Baumgart, did you? Okay. Amanda, why don't we take the roll call vote on approving the sale of the Larson property on Highway 164?
Okay. William Baumgart. Barbara Brusink.
The one that used to have a
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy, aye. Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
And Joe Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0. And that completes our board evening, or the last piece of business that we had for our board evening, for our board meeting tonight. Wow, I guess I'm tired. We stand adjourned.
Got a lot done tonight.